September 20th, 1998 was a fateful day for Malaysia. Its Deputy Prime Minister, Anwar Ibrahim, was sacked from the government. The sacking ignited protest and brought about the Reformasi movement, which called for the government reforms, in particular targeting corruption and cronyism. Their target was then Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. This year is the 15th anniversary of Reformasi. To mark the occasion, we speak to activists and ask them what Reformasi is to them, then and now. Tan Jo Hann has been an activist since his teens. During the height of the protests and demonstrations, he was in the Bakun area of Sarawak, taking it all in with the people about to be displaced by a dam.
In 1999, during the height of the Reformasi movement, I was actually in Sarawak. I was in Sarawak working with the local communities, campaigning on the Bakun issue actually. Some of my colleagues were in Kuala Lumpur, and of course the demonstrations, the people's power, all that, those were going on. I was in Sarawak and we were already excited and talking about it, like what's going on, no? And so mainly when we were talking about the Bakun issues, we were also discussing this political scenario, and also trying to analyze it together with the local communities there. So when this Reformasi period came about, so we were all wondering what's going on, no? And it kind of took us by surprise and very refreshing also. Because as you know, since the 80s, 80s, I mean, that means more than 18 years, 15 years, especially under the Mahathirism. So a lot of things were very tight and we faced a lot of very stringent conditions. So when this thing happened, we were able to see that, wow, alternative movements can happen and people's voices start to come out. It's not so much as the opposition party come into power and all those. It's not that. For us who are in the NGOs, it's more like people's voices are being heard and more are shouting, and seems to be breaking the barrier of fear that has engulfed Malaysia for such a long time. For us who are in the NGO, especially for me who has been involved for so long, it gave us some hope actually, because before that things were very tight. So now we could see that there are people, many people who are like us too, and now beginning to voice out and be brave to voice out their grievances and to fight for something they believe in, which is their basic rights. So for us that was quite a turning point too. It kind of shattered that kind of hard mold, that we could not break through for 30, 40 years of working in NGOs, civil society, talking about very basic issues, like right to housing or right for freedom of expression, right to assembly. But now we see that people are daring to come out. And so for us, it gave us a kind of momentum and impetus to really work on change, because we see that transformation can happen. That was that kind of atmosphere during that time in 1999, for many of us. I can give you some examples, like you see, when I'm also part of Persatuan Masyarakat Selangor, PERMAS. We work with a lot of urban poor, squatters, rumah panjang, low-cost flats. I can tell you that the change was, at that moment, was very evident. Like, for example, before that 1999 period, it was very difficult for us, as say a Chinese guy going into a Malay community and start talking about housing rights. First of all, they will think that, are you a opposition party? No, And then, are you a communist party? No. Those days they used to question like that. And then they don't trust. But I think after 1999, the different ethnic groups began to see a common platform. That was very powerful. And regardless of race, they were able to see the common platform to work together. And so I remember those days after 99, we were then able to even enter into Malay kampungs and have meetings together with the imam, but not talking about politics as such, but more of like your right to housing. How can we go about it? We can work together, NGOs. And there was also a better appreciation of NGOs after 99. Because before 99, as you remember in the 80s, Mahathir had always demonized the NGOs. I remember there were some times when in the newspaper he made a statement saying that we were like demons and US puppets and anti-government. He made statements like that. So the word NGO was like a bad word in the 80s. So in 99, it was, then people were able to say, oh, NGO, NGO, you know, they were excited because they knew that NGOs were now part of this wave of movement, and they also were believing in some of the things that we believed in. So there was a common platform, and that was very powerful. Ordinary people began to open up their eyes and widen their scope to see that things are possible, and why should I keep quiet? Or why should I be afraid? I'm just fighting for my life, for my children, for my family. That kind of things were happening. I think the Reformasi period, to put it in perspective, I think these are what I call the nodal points in history. There were so many of these nodal points in history, right? From, of course, one was your kemerdekaan, Merdeka, and there were so many, you know, 60s and the 50s, or even the workers' movement, or the women's movement, no? So the Reformasi period was one of these nodal points. And for me, nodal points are good because it catalyzes something. It helps you to open up a new road, you know. But then after that, when you travel on that road, you might even have gone way past the Reformasi characteristics. And it is not necessarily have to be like we carry the Reformasi movement, but it is the spirit of the movement that has now transformed into different forms. And if, for example, there's a group of young people who, because of the Reformasi spirit, and now becoming very socially conscious activists, then great, you know. So the activist was born. But now, like after 10 years, 15 years later, the important thing is, what do we do now, you know? How do we carry this spirit forward to make sure that the change becomes more powerful, more dynamic and possible, rather than looking back at those nodal points and say, oh, if only we could be like that again. And I think that's romanticizing, because history is about change and movement and flux. As long as the movement is not cyclical, but cyclical as well as moving forward, no? I think that's important. I'm happy to see that there have been changes in terms of the people's mindset, thinking, the openness and the daring to come forward. And of course, social media is one powerful mechanism that has released the shackles of control over media. You know, mass media, I continue to control it, but now at least we have a channel to reach out to thousands, if not tens and thousands of people, without having to depend on the government-controlled media. You know, so I'm happy that the spirit of so-called Reformasi and the other nodal points in the history of social movements have helped Malaysian people come to this point. If it goes on like that, then we become more matured as a society in politics, in our social mindset, and even our social relationships with each other. One sad point for me is that until today, the issue of racism and racial relationships is, in fact, if not got worse. Reformasi reminded and pulled people, a lot of people together to remind each other, hey, we have common goals, and why are we split because of skin color? You know, at least with a big proportion of people, you know, and that brought back people to remember back the spirit of togetherness and working together and all that, no.